Ladies and gentlemen, this is a new episode of Windows. Today we are going to tackle Egyptian foreign relations, not only from the vision of our foreign ministry, but it seems that our diplomacy is going into layers, from the presidency to the popular diplomacy. Everyone can be an ambassador to Egypt outside, whether he is a sports person, whether he is a normal Egyptian citizen just going abroad for any reason, and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is keen to boost Egyptian ties with the states from all over the world. Recently, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held a very important meeting with African reporters and chief editors, and he had a lot to speak about, and this was a main or a key word. There was a keyword: Egypt's return to Africa, our strategic depth. And also, just a couple of days ago, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi had a very important meeting with the German-Egyptian friendly association. This is an association to tackle the Egyptian-German friendship. We are going to speak in detail about these efforts and about the developments of the Egyptian foreign relations with my dear guests live here in the studio. I am lucky to have two Ibrahims, Dr. Ibrahim al-Ghazawy, our strategic expert, and Dr. Ibrahim Hegazy, a member of the Parliament and our political analyst of this episode. Thank you very much for being with me. Thank you very much for your input and for being on Nile TV International screen.
Thank you so much.
And I'm going to start with the strategic point of view, and when it comes to the strategic elements or dimensions, Africa is our strategic depth, and this is something which unfortunately was not that taken into consideration for years. But now Egypt is back to Africa on all domains. How do you see the importance of such meetings like the one of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the African reporters and chief editors who were visiting Egypt recently?
Well, as you just said, the African depth of Egypt is very strategic to us, and unfortunately, for a little bit long period of time in our recent history, especially when we talk about the years that followed the failed trial of assassination for ex-president Hosni Mubarak, our African relations was more or less abandoned, and that has exactly cost us a lot of our windows of the outside world in Egypt. I have to say this. When we talk about Africa, we don't only talk about geographic neighbors to Egypt. We talk about the depth of sustainable development and life in Egypt indeed. We talk about the Nile Basin countries. We talk about open markets for tens of African countries. And we talk about our historic background that gathered us all together for long and long years. And it was a real colossal mistake that we have neglected all of this all of a sudden because of this failed assassination trial. But one of the greatest steps being taken nowadays from President Sisi is trying to regain this strong relations. And I have been always saying that the development of Egypt starts from Africa.
Amen to that.
Yes. This is our real passage to get out of the bottleneck of our suffering today. I have been to most of the African countries several times in different times, and I know that we have, as Egyptians and Egypt as a state and as a people, we have good position at the hearts of all African, and we didn't use this. We didn't utilize it for our benefit, actually for mutual benefits. We realize this and when we go there, and we realize this also when such moves by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is again opening windows of cooperation, and we find things are much easier to strike it again and to build over it again, because the doors are already open, but we didn't use this.
Fields? This is going to be my question to Dr. Hegazy. As as Dr. Ghazawy kindly mentioned, we had a lot to speak about when it comes to the Egyptian-African ties since Nasser. Because then Egypt was the role model. And Nasser was the role model. Even you are going to find many Africans named Gamal after late Gamal Abdel Nasser. But now, should we start economically? Should we start from the education point of view, as Egypt had a very important role in education in many of the African states? Should cultural and art share or have a share, because this is what we call the soft power? Should we start with what? Or we should, go in all dimensions in the very same time?
Well, it's very, very important to say that we are already there in the infrastructural developments. Because if you look at the profile of these sub-Saharan African countries, most of them are, the trading side is mostly conquered by Indians and Lebanese, or that's why the big projects are actually were part of Egypt's involvement in sub-Saharan Africa, even during Nasser time. We used to have which was the arm of our military, military intelligence.
And the Arab contractors.
And the Arab contractors were in the infrastructure. But this was a trading company that used to have so many branches until the era of Gamal Abdel Nasser. So this was the extent of strategic military existence, but not officially to a great extent. So that's why I strongly believe that you have a couple of companies now that are involved in the infrastructure developments, whether we're talking about electricity, like Sweden, or we're talking about agriculture, real estate developments. So they are all moving to protect the, as Dr. Ghazawy mentioned, the southern part of borders of Egypt.
Yep.
That's number one. The second issue actually is you're trying to block the other countries' information intelligence that exists, and sort of, I don't want to say espionage, but there are some kind of actions that are taking place by other countries and other intelligence agencies of foreign countries, trying to dismantle the southern part so that they can actually control to a great extent the stability and the trust in
shaking the position of Egypt in Africa.
Yes.
I think that this is the aim of many intelligence agencies and many foreign countries. I don't know if they're all foreign or no, but let's say so, because Egypt is a key Mediterranean, Arab, African, Islamic country. So it's our destiny to wear so many hats. And our presence in any place, it means that we are representing all these dimensions. How do you see this as a challenge in front of Egypt? And who should face this challenge? I mean, is it diplomacy? Is it intelligence agencies? Is it economy? Is it trade? Is it development? What?
Actually, let me also tell you one thing. When you mentioned the issue of Councillor Merkel, and she came to visit President Sisi for a couple of days.
Yeah, this is another story. We're going to speak about it in detail.
The point here is because they're all interrelated. We are in a global
Sure.
world, so we should not really look at Africa and what's happening in Africa in isolation from what happened on the northern side of the globe. Bear in mind there is a very important discovery that Egypt announced about it, which is the natural gas of Zohr, natural gas field in the offshore. And from the understanding, this offshore, once it starts to produce, it will be the largest natural gas fields in the whole Mediterranean. Not only that, but also Egypt will be capable, through the alliance with Cyprus and Greece, to export natural gas to Europe, the entire Europe. So that makes a shift of importance from Russia to provide the necessary gas and electricity supply to Europe from Russia to Egypt. And so you can imagine the power of Egypt that will come eventually once we first of all reach the self-sufficiency level by the end of 2018. So after that you will have an influx of hard currency.
And maybe earlier than that, by the way.
Let's cross
Inshallah.
our fingers, inshallah, but at least this is what the plan is by INI and by the Egyptian government.
INI announced that by middle 2017, we are going to produce and generate, or to be accurate, to feel that this Dhuhr
no, but the
gas is going to influence or to have its share in our economy.
That's why, because we will be stopping importing natural gas from other countries. So
Okay.
that's tend to reduce the amount of currency
And the
demand.
second phase is
and the second
support.
phase is export. And so what the president is keep saying, wait, 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 because that's the measure. Why I'm saying this? Because Germans are coming. They know exactly now why.
Yeah.
And British are also coming. And you can see the influx of the foreign direct investment from British companies. And you can see that Ambassador Kaysen is really moving hard to try to connect again, because we lost the file of tourism with the UK. So now we don't need that, because we are focusing more on something more sustainable. So,
And he speaks Arabic very well.
oh, of course.
Yeah. Sir, to take it from what Dr. Hegazy said about Africa and about coming back. Also, just a week ago or something, Engineer Ibrahim Mahlab, the presidential advisor or the presidential assistant for mega and national projects, was there representing Egypt in the African Council for Renewable Energy to speak about the initiative which Egypt launched twice. First, by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in front of the UN General Assembly, and the second time in the climate change conference or climate change summit, which was held in Paris. Egypt was representing Northern Africa. How do you see this and the timing of this right now, to say Egypt is not only back to Africa, but representing other African countries and in the field of renewable energy?
It's a positive addition indeed to the key role that Egypt used historically to play in the African affairs. And also, when we talk about Engineer Ibrahim Mahlab, we talk about a legend in Africa, about Arab Contractors Company. He was the chief of this great company indeed. And a lot of people probably they don't know that Arab Contractors Company has a lot of influence, positive influence in African countries. Most of the African countries, they have a lot of installations, buildings, huge campuses, bridges, infrastructure facilities, roads, etc., that was built by Arab contractors. Even it happened probably twice for me while I was traveling to Kenya for one time, another time to Ghana, that I was met accidentally in the plane with Egyptian engineers that were traveling, to their field offices in these countries. So we talk about sort of Egypt now knowing its way back to Africa. And we hope that this is,
you reminded me with Kenya that only through the last month, the President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi had a very important short visit, an official visit to Kenya, where he was received by President Kenyatta, and they had
it was really warm,
Egyptian-Kenyan summit. They had a press conference right after that. It didn't last except for 4 hours, but it indicated, as you've kindly mentioned, the Egyptian return. How do you see those visits or the importance of those visits, even if they were that short?
Well, I see this as sort of positive recognition how we were late indeed, and how we have to be very quick in terms of our movement tempo forward. The president realizes today that Africa has to come back very quickly to Egypt. Egypt has to get back to Africa very quickly. And following normal red tape or routine moves will take years and years, and we know that this is not going indeed to make positive changes on the ground. So now the president is taking on himself personally this heavy task. And as you just mentioned, while he was in Kenya, and this very particular visit was really impressive, because he was received very warmly, popularly, and even officially. Yes, it was obvious that the President Kenyatta was so pleased, and the words that he said during this visit was really indicative that, yes, you are welcome. Egypt is welcome in Kenya. And I'm quite sure that this is going to happen in any other African country. That's why I told you at the beginning that the doors are already open, but we didn't knock at the doors. Now
In the first place.
In the first place. So
But
now
to
the
choose or
president
to
is
have
doing
priorities,
that.
I think that this is very important. We should do our homework.
Of course, that's true.
Dr. Hegazy, some analysts said that our return to Africa, and this way in specific, is going to have another wonderful, fruitful result to help us in our stance in against or in front of this so-called Renaissance Dam, as it's our national security.
Yep.
Our main water resource, which is the Nile River, is a national security and a threat which we will never allow it to be a danger threatening our lives as Egyptians. Do you agree with this?
Yes, I totally agree. As a matter of fact, I think one of the reasons why we start to awaken a little bit and look back to Africa is that the water file.
Okay.
Obviously, this was neglected for long. Maybe because that earlier we used to be more using the message of military. But now we are using the message of diplomacy and communications, and we are all in the same bucket, and it's all our destination altogether. So it's no longer me against them. It's all together, and we have to live together and we have to survive together. That's a different diplomatic message of President Sisi compared to previous presidents. And that's why that type of message is acceptable from the sub-Saharan presidents and even the publics and populations. We have to realize that we cannot go into a battlefield because we will both be losers, whether we lose in terms of economic reforms in our country or in Ethiopia and the neighboring country. But at the end of the day, the track here may take longer, but definitely it will have more fruitful results because we have to convince the other partners. Because bear in mind, the other partners also have ears to listen to other infiltrating intelligence agencies and governments. And so we have to play it diplomatically, and we have to talk the language that President Sisi is actually using now. And so definitely, over the long term, this will generate the fruitful results that we expect, that our supply of water will not diminish, and at the same time, we are not going to be blocking the economic developments of other neighboring countries, because we should not use in mass communications certain message of friendship and brotherhood between us and other sub-Saharan African countries, and at the same time we are holding the pistol and weapons against any kind of attacks or threats that comes from the southern parts of the continent.
Yes, sir. Regarding terrorism as a global phenomenon, and here it's not targeting a certain area, a certain region or certain countries, but it's unfortunately spreading all over the world. And even I don't know what happened today in this IMF letter in Paris. I mean, it's something which is really amazing to reach this extent. And we are talking about Paris. And Paris, till the moment, they are suffering from what happened in November, where 130 people were killed by a terrorist attack. Regarding uniting against terrorism and facing terrorism, as I said, as a global phenomena, not targeting a special region. How do you see this among the African countries? Because you are going to find the so-called Shabab in Somalia, Boko Haram in Nigeria. I mean, they are all faces of the very same coin. What we should do?
What we should do is what Egypt today tries to do, is try to join hands. Terrorism, we have to understand this phenomenon. It's not local by nature. It's a very universal indeed. Although it's a so ugly phenomenon, but it's still humanitarian in some of its roots indeed. So the fight against terrorism is not an easy task, because we don't only talk about the military or the police fighting. We talk about unrooting the causes for the phenomenon itself. As you said about Paris, yes, Paris is a capital of France, and France is one of the frontline countries in terms of the democracy and stability. But they were not away from terrorism. The problem of terrorism, when it comes to Africa, that we have a lot of apt and suitable fields for raising terrorism and expensive terrorism even in the future. We talk about a lot of hotspots in different African countries where internal clashes and civil problems and civil conflicts taking place for years and years. Not, of course, we talk about Somalia, we talk about Boko Haram in Nigeria, we talk
And
about
Daesh in Libya.
and Daesh in Libya. We talk about problems in southern Sudan, the newly independent state just a couple of years ago, and today they have fight between each other. We talk about Al-Qaeda and the Maghreb Al-Arabi organization, terrorism organization, which inflicts its harm over Algeria, over Tunisia, over Morocco, over Mauritania. So we have a lot of terrorism challenges indeed. So when we talk about what to do, the first thing is to join hands. Join hands because all of this phenomenon activities, they are transnational in terms of moving from one country to another. So here comes the importance of joining hands, the cooperation, real and sincere and serious and sustainable cooperation. We don't talk about just some operations that has to be done jointly, which is indeed, we need this. But this is not the issue. The issue is we have to create basis for sustainable cooperation in terrorism. We talk about addressing the phenomenon in each country. We talk about the learned lesson from different countries. We talk about the security precautions.
Education, development.
We talk about social factor. We talk about everything. And all of this database has to be generalized in all the African countries together. And then set a move how to deal with these issues. I believe one of the good things that has to be done today is, probably using or utilizing the visit of the key journalists who were meeting with President Sisi very recently, because those people will come back will return back to their countries, opening the window of terrorism as an African threat, not an Egyptian or Ethiopian or Somalian. This is an African threat. The media has a very vital role to play. This is not only a concern for one particular country.
Amen to that.
Yeah, and we have, as different people in Africa, understand that this is a main concern to every African society. Egypt tries to do this today, and hopefully African countries realize also that they need to do this.
Dr. Hegazy, when it comes to the Egyptian foreign relations now, they are based on mutual respect, on mutual interests, on having win-win situations in every field in general. During the meeting of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with representatives from the Egyptian-German Friendship Association, they tackled a very controversial or sensitive issue, which is human rights. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was keen to say that we are preserving human rights, but in a way that we are maintaining our national security. And to have both of them, this is a very sensitive equation. I do remember when former UK British Premier David Cameron, when he was speaking about this, he said a very important statement. When it comes to the national security of the UK, do not ask me about human rights. How do you see the double standards, unfortunately, representing Egypt's behavior or way to deal with the human rights issue? And how do you see the president presentation to the Egyptian stance regarding human rights and, in the same time, maintaining our national security?
Well, let me tell you, actually, it is not about human rights. It's about NGO. The law of NGO was totally rejected by countries like Germany and UK in particular. And the reason that because they use these NGOs in Egypt here as a way of generating intelligence and causing political unrest. And so that's why it's not about human rights, because obviously they came, especially the German delegation, they came to try to see what happened with the NGO, German NGO. Some of them are already under investigations.
And no one spoke about the 205 Egyptian detainees who were released with the amnesty of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi recently. And by the way, this is the second batch. No one spoke about this.
That's why the agenda, it's well known when you see what happened in negotiation and discussions. It was all about the law. That's why the president actually is returning the NGO law back to the parliament for further amendments.
You tell us the details.
We are waiting that it comes back again, but we heard that it's not yet signed, but by His Excellency President Sisi, and obviously because we've been, as a group of parliament, we've been in visit in UK last November, and the first thing we were going to talk about, cooperation between our intelligence and the UK intelligence, and we were talking about tourism, but all of a sudden the whole table actually converted to be talking about the NGO law, although we were just about to assign it and approve it in the parliament. And the strong, as you can see also, that one of our members in the parliament was expelled because it seemed that he was generating information about the NGO law before we approved it in the parliament.
According to law.
Exactly. And that's why what you see, it's not the real reasons why they all are pressing very hard, because they know one way of generating information is through the NGO. So when we protect our national security, it's not because of human rights. It's because we know where the roots are and where the bottlenecks are and where the holes that exist, where other intelligence agencies come and infiltrate and develop a sort of political unrest in the Egyptian society.
And simply, so it's our right.
Exactly. So that's what I want to say. It's our red flag to say we can accept something, but we cannot tolerate other things that will cause political unrest at a situation now where Egypt is about to start a new economic era.
To emerge and to be to have many places or many regions in Egypt which are going to be investment and logistic hubs. We are going to have a leap when it comes to our economy, and this is exactly what I wanted to add. As with the visit of Chancellor Angela Merkel, we did not stop here, but she came with a high-ranking delegation with representatives from more than 30 German business institutions, companies, and we are building on this. Even this meeting is a result of, or one of the results of, Merkel's visit to Egypt, where she had, I think, unforgettable moments, especially when she was in the pyramids and she had this concert there. I think that she is going to return back with a lot of memories which are never going to be forgotten. Tell me, sir, about what we are doing. I mean, as I said, it's not only a visit. We are building on this visit. How do you see this?
Germany is unique when it comes to assessing what Germany can do in terms of mutual relations between Egypt and European Union as a whole, and specifically with a country as big and as strong and as advanced and developed as Germany. Germany is the main locomotive of the European Union economy, with gross domestic production that exceeds $6 trillion a year. So we talk about an enormous economy potentials for dealing and cooperation with Germany. Even talking about this very particular visit by Chancellor Angela Merkel, one of the causes was the opening, the inauguration of 3 electricity stations that was formed and established by Siemens, one of the largest German companies and the largest in the world. So we talk about a German investment in Egypt that exceeds 12 billion US dollars. The horizon for cooperation between Germany and Egypt is really limitless. And it's our task in Egypt today, not only for the government, which is, of course, on top of all the committed partners, the government on top of them, but also the different societies of businessmen. The whole